The mainstream media releases the name of the police officer that was involved in the Jacob Blake shooting, and then conveniently buries the fact that Jacob Blake himself had a knife. Charges are filed against the teenager who defended himself on a Kenosha street, and a GoFundMe for him gets taken down almost immediately. Sports teams that nobody cares about or is watching right now boycott and walk off the field in order to make a statement about Kenosha, and Hurricane Laura, crashes into Louisiana. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good morning and welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar. We've got a bunch of stuff to get to. We have got all kinds of stuff to get to. The whole world is in clown world right now, and I can't believe some of the things that we are seeing from today. And that is going on the fact that I did walk around in my former hometown for 3 hours yesterday and just looked at the carnage, along with standing over and making sure that all of my family was safe, because I didn't have any idea what was going on with there and if they were going out to residential neighborhoods or not. Now, I found out that they weren't going into residential neighborhoods yet at that point, but not knowing when I got off the air yesterday was a little bit of a hard pill to swallow, so I had to go down there and see it for myself. But before we get into all of our Kenosha-y goodness and everything else that we have to talk about today here, head on over to freedomscoop.com. FreedomScoop.com is going to be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs. We carry great shows like the Daily Ignoramus. We also carry The Generational Gap, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Freckles and Brit Show, and much more. So come on over there and check us out. Pick up some of the swag that we have over in the swag shop and help us support great creators. All right, let's get into the stocks first before we get into anything else, because it looks like after a little bit of a downturn at the beginning of the day, we had a little bit of an upturn again. We're inching closer and closer to that 29,000 mark here, people, which means that people are invested in the future and they think that the market is going to go somewhere, and so is the economy. So they're not going to start throwing money into stuff that is going to lose them money in the downturn. They're going to stuff that stuff into mattresses if they think it's going to lose them money. So I think the investors look at the economy and say it's doing well. I don't think that the news wants you to think it's going to do well, but I think the investors are definitely going to try and convince you that this is doing well. Let's get into the stocks news. From Investors Business Daily, Dow Jones Futures, hot stock market rally, flashes more warning signs. Fed Chief Jerome Powell speech key. Yeah, they've been saying warning signs since April. Since everything started going up, they've been saying warning signs, warning signs, warning signs, and honestly, I've yet to see it. I have yet to see it. But I will continue to read the fear porn coming from them and have them tell you, don't you dare put your money into the stock market because it might actually do something good for the economy. But let's see what IBD has to say. From Ed Carson, Dow Jones Futures fell slightly versus fair value Thursday, along with S&P 500 futures and NASDAQ futures, ahead of a major policy speech by Federal Chief Jerome Powell before the opening bell. The stock market rally powered higher Wednesday on Salesforce earnings, but once again, there are warning signs. The S&P 500 and NASDAQ hit record highs Wednesday, with Salesforce stocks surging and spurring a broad software advance, which included Adobe and Shopify. Tesla and FANG stocks, Facebook, and Netflix were among the many notable winners. But the NASDAQ, already extended on a long-term chart, is starting to flash short-term warning signs. After the close, database software makers Splunk, Elastic, and Box reported earnings. So did housewares retailers Williams-Sonoma and Chinese online entertainment firm Bilibili. I've never heard of that one before. Gonna move this here so I can read. Dollar Store's Dollar General and Dollar Tree stock reported better than expected earnings early Thursday. Oh, that's because you've told millions of people that they're not allowed to go to work, and they're just basically getting by on the unemployment at this point. Good job. Splunk stock fell 1% in the pre-market on mixed results after surging 6.45% on Wednesday. Elastic stock rose 3% on strong results and guidance after stretching 8.3% higher on Wednesday. Box stock spiked 10% on a beat and raise quarter, signaling a move towards a buy point. Williams-Sonoma stock fell 6% despite easily beating Views. Bilibili retreated 6% after missing earnings. Views, Splunk, and Bilibili had closed on or in on buy zones, while Elastic moved out of range. Box has been consolidating, and Williams-Sonoma was slightly extended. Dollar General stock rose slightly in the pre-market, while Dollar Tree fell 6%. Both dollar store stocks climbed Wednesday to the edge of buy zones. Separately, Xpeng Motors priced an upsized IPO Wednesday night. It'll be the latest China electric vehicle rival to Tesla to trade in the U.S. NIO extended Tuesday's breakout, while the newly public Li Auto vaulted above buy point on Wednesday. Tesla stock rose to a new high. Do you think people in this country will actually buy Chinese cars? I've been thinking about that ever since I started hearing about Chinese cars getting traded in this country. Do you think people here would actually buy them? I mean, I guess they're buying South Korean, but I don't know. Maybe if it's cheap enough, people will go out, like some of the college students and whatnot, will go out and buy them and just say it's the best thing for the money and everything else, like they do with Honda right now, and Hyundai and various other things here. But I don't see the appetite in the U.S. to buy Chinese cars. I don't. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the audience sees something that I don't see from day to day, but I don't see it. Let's keep going here. Also, TikTok CEO Kevin Mayer is leaving the social media company after just 3 months, citing the political environment and the likely shift in role for his post. The Trump administration has threatened to ban TikTok in the U.S. if China's ByteDance doesn't sell the business, perhaps to Microsoft. Mayer was a top Disney executive before joining TikTok. Tesla, Netflix, and Adobe are on IBD leaderboard. Facebook stock, Shopify, and Netflix are on Swing Trader. Salesforce stock, Adobe, and Dollar General are on IBD long-term leaders. Netflix and Dollar General are on the IBD 50 list. And just a little bit into the futures. Dow Jones futures fell 0.15% versus fair value, while S&P 500 futures lost 0.1%. NASDAQ 100 futures retreated 0.1% versus fair value. Remember, overnight action in the Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. You remember when we were talking about the futures and saying that they had to hit the circuit breaker because they hit their 5% limit in one direction or the other, and they couldn't trade anymore on the futures anymore? And now we're like 0.1%, and this is a huge margin, and 0.15%, and oh my god, the world's going to end, and everything else like that. Because I remember all that. Alright, I got another one here from CNBC. Here's what happened to the stock market on Wednesday from Fred Imbert. Dow Jones Industrial Average rises 83 points. Salesforce leads tech higher. We saw a little bit about that. Positive vaccine news, strong data. Sentiment was also helped by positive news on the coronavirus vaccine that they've been promising to us since March. Front and solid. U.S. economic data. Moderna said its coronavirus vaccine showed promising results in a small trial of patients aged 56 to older. The company's stock jumped 6% on the news. U.S. durable goods orders jumped 11.2% in July, easily topping a 4.3% estimate from Refinitiv. And the last one here is Jerome Powell is set to deliver a highly anticipated speech on Thursday. And weekly jobless claims data is scheduled for release as well. So we'll see what the unemployment numbers are. Jerome Powell is going to have something to say, and he controls the Fed, which makes him a scary, scary human being. And they promised you yet another vaccine. Alright, let's talk about my hometown. Still in tatters. Still burning. Alright, top news today. DOJ identifies the officer who shot Jacob Blake. Says knife was recovered from floorboard. Which I'm sure is exactly how they wanted you to read this here. That's why they didn't lead with the other part of this here. From Amanda St. Hilaire and Katie DeLong over at Fox 6, a local Milwaukee Fox affiliate. Officials with the Wisconsin Department of Justice Division of Criminal Investigation on Wednesday evening, August 26th, released the name of the officer who shot Jacob Blake Sunday, August 23rd. Kenosha Police Officer Rustin Shesky, a 7-year veteran of the department. DOJ officials said Blake admitted that he had a knife in his possession Sunday evening. DOJ officials said Kenosha police were dispatched to a residence near 28th Street and 40th Avenue after a female caller reported that her boyfriend was present and was not supposed to be on the premises. During the incident, officers attempted to arrest Blake, 29. Yeah, Fox 6 is at least coming out with what actually happened here instead of the narrative that they tried to push up with, well, he was just in there trying to break up a fight. DOJ officials said law enforcement deployed a taser to attempt to stop Blake. However, the taser was not successful. Blake then walked around his vehicle, opened the driver's side door, and leaned forward, officials said. While holding onto Blake's shirt, Officer Shesky fired his service weapon 7 times into Mr. Blake's back. No other officer fired their weapon. DOJ officials noted the Kenosha Police Department does not have body cameras, therefore the officers were not wearing body cameras. During the investigation following the initial incident, Blake admitted that he had a knife in his possession, officials said. So he's up and responsive and talking, and he admitted to this here. DCI agents recovered a knife from the driver's side floorboard of Blake's vehicle. A search of the vehicle located no additional weapons. Law enforcement immediately provided medical aid to Blake. Flight for Life transported Blake to Frederick Hospital in Milwaukee, where he remained as of Wednesday. DCI is leading this investigation and is assisted by the FBI, Wisconsin State Patrol, and Kenosha County Sheriff's Department. The involved officers have been placed on administrative leave. Officials with the DOJ noted in a news release Wednesday that the DCI report will be turned over to a prosecutor when the DCI is the lead investigating agency of a shooting-involved law enforcement officer. DCI aims to provide a report of the incident to the prosecutor within 30 days. The prosecutor then reviews the report and makes a determination about what charges, if any, are appropriate. If the prosecutor determines there's no basis for prosecution of the law enforcement officer, DCI will thereafter make a report available to the public. So, as we're looking into this, we're seeing a few things unfold and a few things change as we look at this. Now, first and foremost, Blake had a knife. He admitted to it. They saw it in the picture. I don't know if that was photoshopped or not, but they saw the one in the picture. And if it is the actual knife that we saw in the picture, and if it wasn't photoshopped, it wasn't a kitchen knife that he had carried. He brought something intended to do harm. And there are more and more layers to this story. More is going to come out of this. I still look at this and I still see that the officer is going to be exonerated from all of this. He's not going to see a day in jail. Even after expending 7 shots, he's not going to see a day in jail. He is going to have to move out of the city, which I think a lot of people are going to be moving out of that city after the last couple days. This is the closest thing that I've ever seen to hell on earth. But I can't believe, for God's sake, the AG released this guy's name in the middle of the investigation. That is disgusting. I can't believe it. But of course, it's a Tony Evers appointee, so he's doing something to try and take the heat up off the state of Wisconsin, especially given the fact that it might be justified. They're hoping that the officer gets murdered before he has to go and try and lose his case from being from having charges pressed on him. So this is going to become even more of a mess as we move along and as we see this here. But that's what's coming up out of Fox 6, the local affiliate. From Fox News, I have Blake had a knife in car when Kenosha cops shot him, Wisconsin DOJ. From Louis Casiano, Jacob Blake had a knife on the floorboard of his car when he was shot by police, said the Wisconsin Department of Justice, which also identified the officer who shot him as, and I'm not going to read the name anymore. I shouldn't have read it the first time, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to read it anymore here. The knife was recovered from the driver's side of Blake's SUV, the agency said. It did not say whether Blake was holding the knife when Shesky, a 7-year veteran of the Kenosha Police Department, shot him Sunday evening. Blake admitted to having the knife during the investigation, officials said. No other weapons were recovered. According to a Wisconsin DOJ news release, officers responded to a domestic dispute after a woman reported her boyfriend was unlawfully on the premises. Officers attempted to arrest Blake and a taser was used, but it did not subdue him, authorities said. As Blake walked around the driver's side of the SUV, he opened the door and leaned forward in the vehicle. Officer held onto Blake's shirt and fired 7 times, striking him in the back. No other officer opened fire. Actually, a lot of this here, it appears to be what we read over in the Fox 6 article. So, yeah, that's what they're seeing off of this here. It's a matter of what's important here. The DOJ releases the name, and he had a knife. Or Fox News, he had a knife. And this is going to be your media spin, and we're going to see this at work for plenty of other things as well as we go along. So let's keep going here. Another local affiliate, this time from NBC out of Milwaukee. President Trump says Governor Evers has accepted federal assistance over Kenosha unrest. President Donald Trump tweeted Wednesday that Governor Tony Evers has accepted federal assistance in Kenosha. The assistance comes as protests continue in Kenosha over the police shooting of Jacob Blake. On Tuesday, the White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows said Governor Evers had turned down assistance from the federal government. Now, however, President Trump is saying that he has accepted help. My team just got off the phone with Governor Evers, who agreed to accept federal assistance, wrote President Trump in a tweet. Today, I will be sending federal law enforcement and the National Guard to Kenosha, Wisconsin to restore law and order. Meadows had initially said he called Evers Tuesday and offered to send more National Guard troops to assist, but Evers refused. We have National Guard standing by, we have National Guard standing by that if the general for the National Guard needs additional help, we're there to do it. But today, that request was denied by the governor. We read that yesterday from Meadows. The troops are being sent on Wednesday, according to the president. The additional troops will work to control the unrest in Kenosha that has led to 2 deaths and a large amount of building damage. So, yep, they're sending more in, and from what I understand, I didn't listen to the scanner last night. I couldn't. After seeing everything, after the stress of everything yesterday, and after going on Beauty and the Beta and talking about it, I said, enough is enough. I need to get some sleep, because I haven't been sleeping all this week. I need to get some sleep. So I laid down. As soon as I had some food in my belly, I laid down and I just slept. But I had some other people reporting to me that the police scanner was saying that there were a lot of arrests being out there. So the area might not turn into another Chaz, which, given the fact that they had several physical barriers in place already, just natural barriers like the train tracks and everything else, that it would be very easy for that area to turn into another occupied protest. But it doesn't appear that they're going to be doing so, and the law enforcement is coming in to make sure that they're working with the police and taking control and protecting the buildings and the people that live in the area. And one of the things that I noted while I was walking through yesterday was even on the second day where it was supposed to be worse, we weren't seeing a lot of residential areas being targeted. I know that we had militias coming up, and part of what they were doing when they were coming up was to protect the residential areas, but they're not really going into the residential areas, which is good, which actually makes me really happy, the fact that they're not. But regardless, they're destroying a city, they're destroying businesses. I can't believe that furniture store that had nothing to do with anything got destroyed. Those 2 storefronts on Roosevelt Road got destroyed, with apartments above them and clothing. I saw clothing sticking out of the rubble. It's a horrible time. Storefronts on 22nd Avenue destroyed. I had a guy drive by in a Dodge. As he was looking at this, he was gawking like everybody else. And a lot of people were driving along Roosevelt Road just to gawk, because that was where a lot of the storefront damage was. So that's what they had to go and get out and see it for themselves, just like I did. But I parked a long way away and went on foot. But one guy drove by in probably a later model Ram, and he was just looking up, and I heard the sarcasm in his voice. He says, "Look at all that justice. All that justice, I swear." I mean, I saw buildings yesterday that were marked as minority owned, please don't hurt us. Begging. I saw other signs that said, we offer help to mental health patients. Please don't hurt us. And of course, other signs saying, "We support BLM, we support ACAB, please don't hurt us." I saw a lot of paintings in windows that said, "Please don't hurt us." And I can't believe I'm seeing this in really a suburban city. But that's what I have on this so far. Let's keep going. From Fox News once again. Trump says he will send federal law enforcement, National Guard to Kenosha after Jacob Blake shooting. From Brooks Singman. A little bit of an update from the local story here. President Trump on Wednesday said he will send federal law enforcement and the National Guard to Kenosha, Wisconsin, to restore law and order amid the days of unrest in the city. "We will not stand for looting, arson, violence, and lawlessness on American streets," the president tweeted on Wednesday. "My team just got off the phone with Governor Evers, who agreed to help accept federal assistance. Portland should do the same." Yeah, when you've got your union, teachers union puppet that admits that you've got a problem, you've got a fucking problem here. And yeah, Portland should be doing the same at this point. The president added, "Today, I will be sending federal law enforcement and the National Guard to Kenosha, Wisconsin to restore law and order." Excuse me. So yeah, that's what we're seeing here, is going back and seeing everybody come out and the National Guard coming in. And I will admit, I didn't see as much news tonight. I didn't see any news about the current protests here. All I saw was the news about the kid getting arrested, which we'll be talking about here in just a moment. So that's what we're seeing up out of this here. And yeah, they're cracking down. Equal protection means protection of homes as well, and businesses. All right, let's keep going here. From the Daily Wire. Watch. CNN claims Kenosha protests are fiery, but mostly peaceful as city burns behind reporter. From the Daily Wire News. CNN ran a segment on the unrest on Kenosha on Tuesday night that featured a chyron. I can't talk today. That featured a chyron claiming that the protests were fiery but mostly peaceful, as a reporter who was on the ground stood in front of the city that was on fire. "What you're seeing behind me is one of the multiple locations that have been burning in Kenosha, Wisconsin over the course of the night," the CNN reporter said. "A second night since Jacob Blake was seen shot in the back 7 times by a police officer. And what you're seeing now, these images come in stark contrast to what we saw over the course of the daytime hours in Kenosha and into the early evening, which were largely peaceful demonstrations in the face of law enforcement," the reporter continued. "It wasn't until night fell that things began to get a little bit more contentious. Things were being thrown back and forth. Police started using some of those crowd dispersal tactics like tear gas, even playing really loud sounds to push them out. And then, what you're seeing, the common that ties all this together, is an expression of anger and frustration over what people feel like has become an all too familiar story, playing out in places from across the country, not just here in Kenosha, Wisconsin," the reporter said. And this is a tweet from Caleb Hull here. "You can't make this up. A CNN reporter is standing in front of a building engulfed in flames." And CNN's chyron reads, "Fiery but mostly peaceful protests after police shooting."
Christine, Laura, what you're seeing behind me is one of multiple locations that have been burning in Kenosha, Wisconsin over the course of the night. A second night since Jacob Blake was seen shot in the back 7 times by a police officer. And what you are seeing now, these images come in stark contrast to what we saw over the course of the daytime hours in Kenosha and into the early evening, which were largely peaceful demonstrations in the face of law enforcement. It wasn't until night fell that things began to get a little bit more contentious. Things were thrown back and forth. Police started using some of those crowd dispersal tactics like tear gas, even playing rarely.
All right, so we get the gist of that, and I read everything else that he said there already. And yes, it's mostly peaceful when you've got a fire like that burning up behind you. Mostly peaceful. All right, let's keep going here. Oops. So now we get to talk about the little kid that defended himself here. Illinois teen arrested in fatal shooting at Kenosha protest. Police say, from Eric Levinson, Alicia Ibrahimji, and Christina Maxoris. A 17-year-old Illinois resident connected to an overnight shooting during a protest in Kenosha, Wisconsin, was taken into custody Wednesday morning. According to police in Antioch, Illinois, Wisconsin authorities issued an arrest warrant charging Kyle Rittenhouse with first-degree intentional homicide. Antioch police said he is in the custody of the Lake County judicial system pending an extradition hearing to transfer him from Illinois to Wisconsin. Antioch is located about 15 to 20 miles from Kenosha, just across the state border. Yep, a little bit south and a little bit west. I've been there many times. Kenosha Police Chief Daniel Miskinis confirmed that a 17-year-old Antioch resident has been charged in a shooting incident and said that the man was involved in the use of firearms to resolve whatever conflict was in place. He called the killing senseless violence and said he couldn't say what led to the shooting. The arrest comes less than a day after 2 people were killed and a third was seriously wounded in the shooting during a protest over the police shooting of Jacob Blake. Police said the victims were identified as a 26-year-old from Silver Lake and a 36-year-old from Kenosha. Several videos from witnesses at the scene showed a person with a long gun opening fire during the protest. Police have not confirmed if Rittenhouse is the person in these videos. Kenosha County Sheriff David Beth told the New York Times that his office is investigating whether the shooting resulted from a conflict between demonstrators and a group of men with weapons who were protecting businesses. Protesters have demonstrated in the streets after police shot Blake, a 29-year-old black man, multiple times in the back as he tried to enter an SUV with his children in the vehicle. So yes, they are filing charges and filing an extradition warrant because the kid didn't think he did anything wrong. He protected himself. 7 people were rushing at the kid. He came out into a barrel roll, raised up, and shot. And then they scattered as soon as they realized that that gun wasn't just for show, that he was actually going to do something with it. And I can tell you right now that the headline probably would have read really differently if he had not pulled the trigger. It would have been, gun owner has gun taken from him, used against him. Because I'm willing to bet with the fact that 7 people were rushing that kid that they would have turned that rifle back on him and shot him. Probably right in the fucking head. Given the fact that they were the aggressors off of this. This kid was doing this in self-defense. Now, he may run into some issues with carrying a firearm across state lines. As a minor. He may actually still face some charges for this, but I have seen multiple angles of this, and now we've got another video a little bit later on that we're going to watch for this that shows the Molotov, I believe. Yeah, I do have that video up here. So we can go back and look and see the fact that something was lobbed at this kid here. This was a fully defensive shooting. I already had somebody reply tweet back to me over and said, when I mentioned the fact that I live 6 blocks from where they torched the car dealership, he says, "Oh, you mean where so you live 6 blocks from where the right-wing militiamen killed those 2 people?" First off, all militias are right-wing because the left wing is trying to force authority down your throat. Any militia right now that is out to defend liberty is going to be right-wing at this point. And that's going to change over time once again. But yes, right now, it's just like I told Stephen Ignoramus. There can be no such thing as a left-wing boog. There's no such thing as a left-wing boog because the boogaloo is rising up against the aggressors, who are the federal government, who are trying to impede on your life. And the left wing is supporting the federal government, who is trying to impede on your life. There can be no right-wing boog. Or left-wing boog, rather. And right now, there can be no left-wing militia, either. So that's what we're seeing up off of this here. And now we're just going into repeats of various things with the Jacob Blake killing. I've got another one here from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. 17-year-old suspect in Kenosha shootings was too young to open carry in Wisconsin, might still raise self-defense. From Bruce Vilmetti. Within hours of 2 fatal shootings of protesters by an armed counter-protester late Tuesday in Kenosha rather, the internet was flooded with videos of the incident that raised lots of questions. Here are the basics on Wisconsin's relevant laws and what legal experts have to say on the situation. 1. Was it legal to carry a rifle in the protests? If a person is not otherwise prohibited from possessing a firearm, it is legal to carry any legal firearm openly in Wisconsin. Before Wisconsin passed concealed carry law in 2011, gun rights advocates organized open carry group outings and won acquittals or dismissals for several people arrested during the events. More recently, gun owners have been carrying small or assault rifles at demonstrations at state capitals against stay-at-home orders during the early months of the pandemic this spring. Yes, we have open carry in this state. Could the suspect carry the rifle legally? Kyle Rittenhouse, a 17-year-old militia member who has been arrested and is facing a homicide charge in the matter, was not old enough to legally carry the assault-style rifle he had, according to the statute, would say anyone under 18 who goes armed with a deadly weapon is guilty of a Class A misdemeanor. John Monroe, a lawyer who specializes in gun rights cases, believes an exemption for rifles and shotguns intended to allow people aged 16 and 17 to hunt could apply. I believe it goes further than that because we take hunter safety at 12. I know that there's supposed to be adult supervision for it, but he could be in violation of having a gun within a gun-free zone if there was, for instance, a school nearby. There was not. Also, Illinois law requires anyone who owns any kind of firearm in that state to have a firearm owner's identification card, but that is only available to someone 21 or older or someone with a sponsor who is 21 and eligible for a card, which I'm guessing is going to apply at this point. Can you use deadly force to protect property? No. Bullshit. This is a castle doctrine state. Videos from earlier Monday night showed Rittenhouse apparently guarding a used car lot, along with other men with guns. Comments on social media about some of the videos from purported witnesses indicated that Rittenhouse may have verbally confronted someone who was attempting to damage cars and that the person began chasing Rittenhouse. It is unclear exactly what prompted the initial confrontation. That is bullshit false right there. I don't know what legal expert came up with that, but that is bullshit false. If your life is on the line, you have the right and the responsibility to use deadly force in my state. Was Rittenhouse acting in self-defense when he fired his weapon? Many gun rights advocates believe he was based only on watching the videos, but that would ultimately be a question for a jury to answer. Nick Clark, president and CEO of Wisconsin Carry, a gun rights advocacy group, who instructs classes for those obtaining concealed carry permits, thinks Rittenhouse followed the principles of such courses. We teach to retreat when possible, Clark said. He is fleeing, but the threat follows him. He thought Rittenhouse showed restraint in not immediately shooting one of the people he later shot in the elbow after the man first halted his approach to Rittenhouse and then lunged at him. Others will likely argue, because they want to see all guns out of the hands of all people so the government can come in and take over, that the people going after Rittenhouse in the street after the first shooting were attempting to detain him for police to get him to drop the gun and avoid further shootings. Okay. It is the dead of night. Seven people are running at you that were just smashing windows of cars and now attempting to pull the firearm from my hands. You will be taking that out of my dead hands. I will be deceased before you are removing that firearm from my hands, you fucksticks. I will be dead. What charges will Rittenhouse ultimately face? Kenosha officials did not indicate that at a news conference on Wednesday. Lake County, Illinois records suggest that at least one death will be charged as first-degree intentional homicide, which carries a mandatory life sentence. The case could resolve in a lesser charge. Through plea bargaining, Rittenhouse could face a reckless homicide charge in the second death that, according to video, appears to be in reaction to an attack. Alright, and we saw the video yesterday. Does Wisconsin have a stand your ground law? No, such laws, like in Florida, say you could threaten or use deadly force in response to a perceived threat of great bodily harm without first having to try to retreat or escape the threat. Wisconsin does not recognize the so-called castle doctrine. That is false, by the way, which presumes a person acted lawfully in self-defense when they could use deadly force within their home, vehicle, or business, but that presumption can be overcome with evidence that the use of force was unreasonable. Does qualified immunity apply? No, the doctrine has been discussed a lot recently as the reason police officers are rarely held liable for shooting people in the line of duty, but that doctrine does not apply to a non-law enforcement person using deadly force. That is the first thing that they've put here that is true. there's no qualified immunity. No, this kid is going to walk. I don't care what they try and hang on him at this point. This was self-defense. This was reasonable self-defense. And I don't know where the lawyer for the Journal-Sentinel got his law degree, but yes, he has pushed several falsehoods in this article. All right, and we are going to watch the video now of what we saw before this. We saw where he did the barrel roll, pulled up, and shot. And I hate to tell you this, but even in a state that doesn't have castle doctrine, even in a state that has duty to retreat laws, if you charge somebody that's got a rifle, you're going to get shot. You are going to be deceased at the end of this. All right. Let's have a listen, though. So this is what happened immediately before the kids started running down the street. Thank you to Sam Parker for putting this up here. Get this opened up back to the beginning. Let me get your ears on and we will hear and see what happened. So from that video, you see something being thrown at him. Now, people are saying that it was a Molotov cocktail. I did not see it burst or blow up. So if it was, then it was a very poorly designed one and didn't do the job that it was supposed to. But yes, he's being assaulted. He's got something being thrown at him. So following the law, the aggressors came to aggress against him. And now he sits and wonders whether he's going up for murder for defending himself. And once again, we're trying to have a message sent to the people of this country in the wake of the McCloskeys that no, you will not defend yourself. You will take whatever the government throws at you, whether it be rioters, protesters, or people coming in and demanding that you take a vaccine. That's the message we're trying to send to you, so be prepared for that. All right, let's jump out of this here. I got a tweet here from everybody's favorite little skinny fucking socialist, David Hogg. That's an interesting way to cover a domestic terrorist, New York Post. Replying to a tweet where the New York Post posts that suspected teen gunman Kyle Rittenhouse was spotted cleaning Kenosha graffiti before the shooting. Because once again, Hogg wants to spin a narrative to you and tell you exactly what it is that you are supposed to think. All right, let's read the actual article here. From the New York Post, from Vincent Barone, suspected teen gunman Kyle Rittenhouse spotted cleaning Kenosha graffiti before a shooting. The suspected teen shooter who killed 2 Kenosha protesters and injured a third Tuesday night was photographed cleaning graffiti in the city just hours before the violence. Kyle Rittenhouse, 17, of Antioch, Illinois, allegedly traveled to Kenosha and affiliated himself with a small but heavily armed militia that claimed to be helping law enforcement to protect the city after the police shooting of Jacob Blake. Before allegedly being filmed shooting protesters during a tense confrontation, Rittenhouse was spotted joining other volunteers in cleaning graffiti from a high school nearby the Kenosha County Courthouse. That was Ruther High School, which we looked at both of the live streams that I did yesterday. Later that night, a gunman carrying a rifle, suspected to be Rittenhouse, was caught in disturbing footage shooting protesters who had chased after him. The protesters were reportedly in pursuit of Rittenhouse after another man was shot in the head. Rittenhouse also appears to be an avid supporter of the police. Screenshots from his now removed Facebook page show one image of Rittenhouse posing with a rifle alongside another boy was uploaded with a Blue Lives Matter frame. Anthony Huber, 26, of Silver Lake, Wisconsin, as well as another 36-year-old man were killed in the shooting. Another 26-year-old man was injured. Rittenhouse, 17, was charged with first-degree intentional homicide and is awaiting extradition from Illinois, where he was arrested. He may also face something into leaving the state after or during an investigation. There may be that too, but I don't know if that's going to stick because he's a minor, but we'll see off of that. But we will see what's going on with that as well. I've got another one here on this one, and then we'll move on into other news. Now, this is not a green check verified outlet, but I've gone through and looked into the claims that go along with this as well. So take this for what it is, take this for what's written on the page, and don't read into it as gospel, because it hasn't gone through NewsGuard. But I thought this was interesting. I saw this on Instagram right before I went live. Did someone organize an online fundraiser for the Kenosha murder suspect? Claim. A fundraiser was posted online on behalf of the 17-year-old accused of killing 2 people in Kenosha, Wisconsin in August of 2020. Rating is true. Reporting. Not long after his identity was revealed, the 17-year-old Illinois teen accused of committing a double murder in Kenosha, Wisconsin was the intended beneficiary of an online fundraiser in his name. The fundraiser raised $705 on GoFundMe before apparently being taken down by the site. It is unclear who registered the short-lived campaign. The fundraising page bore the suspect's name and photograph, as well as the message, "Hey, this is Kyle. I got myself in a pretty bad situation, but I'm completely innocent, and I was just protecting myself against these Marxist tyrants. Hashtag Trump 2020. The page also incorrectly identified the suspect as a resident of Kenosha. He's actually from Antioch, Illinois, where he was arrested the day after the fatal shooting. Journalist Robert Evans later reported that a separate fundraiser for the suspect was created on the website Fundly. The page for this campaign lists the right-wing militia group American Wolf as its creator. More than $19,000 has been donated as of the early evening of August 26th of 2020. The group also calls itself a nonprofit and charity in promoting the campaign. So yeah, GoFundMe took this down immediately because fuck you. They can put up a GoFundMe for somebody who got caught doxing police officers, for people who've done way more heinous stuff than this. But God forbid they fund somebody else's legal defense fund. They are partial at this point, and I may actually have to stop using them. Sorry, Gen Gap guys, but we got to find something else here if this is what they're going to do, because they'll take anything down that they don't agree with. All right. The next one here is more rioting, this time coming out of Minneapolis. Riots, looting breakout in Minneapolis after murder suspect commits suicide. Police release video. From Ryan Saavedra. Rioting and looting once again broke out in Democrat-controlled Minneapolis on Wednesday night after the police were falsely accused of shooting a black man. Law enforcement officials quickly released a video showing that the man, who they said was a murder suspect, shot and killed himself. Groups of people are looting multiple stores in downtown Minneapolis, Fox 9 News reported. Social media posts showing images of people damaging items in a Target, as well as broken windows of surrounding stores, Haskell's liquor store, and the Medical Arts building also appear to have been looted. Law enforcement officials who were after the suspect for his alleged connection to a deadly shooting earlier in the day released a video of the suspect that confirmed that the suspect shot himself as police arrived on the scene. We've got cops from all over the Twin Cities coming out here to maintain order because the citizens of Minneapolis and Hennepin County deserve to feel safe, said Hennepin County Sheriff David Hutchinson. The people causing problems are going to jail tonight. Yeah, they're not going to stand up for this a second time. Ian Miles Chong writes, looting is now taking place at the Nicollet Mall in Minneapolis after a man committed suicide while being pursued by the police. Any excuse to riot. Yeah, that does seem a little bit weird that they're rioting over the fact that he killed himself. I mean, the police didn't do it. Let's see this one here.
Run that shit! Hey, you stay by the door. They're coming in. One second. One second. Don't do it.
They busted this thing down. Hey, they sprayed everything.
Look at all justice. Look at all that justice, guys. All that justice. So that's what we're seeing up off of this here. And yeah, I know, like I said, they said that the police came out right away off of this because they're not going to take this second one sitting down. They're going to get up and they're going to do something about this here. And we got some people breaking windows while the police look on from inside. And everybody's filming it too.
Bro, I'm beating your house. I'm done now. Period.
Pause this one here. After a man shot himself as police approached him, how is this the fault of the police?
Burn this shit down!
Looting in downtown Minneapolis, Haskell's liquor store and medical arts building including. This is all linked to alleged suicide of a suspect in an earlier homicide. Crowds down here were convinced he was shot by police. Yeah, look at all that justice. So much justicing, people. So that's what we're seeing up in Minneapolis once again here, and they're just taking any excuse to go out and riot and loot and get free shit. They don't care anymore. So that's what we're seeing up off of this, and this is still at this point a developing story, so we'll be watching this more as more and more left-wing cities begin to burn. Now, I cite other creators from time to time, and one of the ones that I have to cite at this point is the Razor Fist video that came out yesterday. I listened to on my way home from Kenosha, and it pointed out everything that we need to sit back and watch, that everything that's happening from all of this. Some of this does appear to be planned. Now, first off, the Bernie Bros said that they weren't going to fall in line with the DNC. They were going to loot and riot and burn shit down. They had the intention to do so after their candidate lost for the second time. But to come out and look at this, some of this was intended to be planned to try and make sure that it looked like the entire nation was out of control if they had just a few little riots here and there. But this is just spread beyond the control of anybody at this point. These people are coming in from out of state, from out of the city. I mean, people were coming from Green Bay and Chicago to come and do some of the looting in Kenosha. They were getting bussed in. They're staying at the hotels out west of the interstate to come in and bust shit up and do some looting. This isn't about justice anymore. This is about getting free shit. And luckily enough, somebody in Kenosha was brave enough, even though he was from out of state, was brave enough to come and try and defend some of this. And now it's going to cost him his entire adult life. But that's what we're seeing up off of this here. All right, let's keep going here. A little bit of the protests that come along with that were actually peaceful. Tired of the killings, pro athletes refuse to play amid racial injustice protests. From Tom Goldman over at NPR. Over at NPR, where they talk like this. And you don't know what's happening. And you don't know why you feel so sleepy while you're driving down the road. But they talk like this. They tell you the news in a very easy to digest format. Alright. Professional sports teams in several leagues have taken their most dramatic steps yet in an effort to raise awareness about social justice issues. Wednesday, the NBA's Milwaukee Bucks decided not to play after their playoff game against the Orlando Magic to protest last weekend's police shooting of Jacob Blake, an African-American man in Wisconsin. Following the Bucks' decision, the NBA announced all 3 playoff games scheduled for Wednesday were postponed. According to the league, those 3 games, including the Houston Rockets, the Oklahoma City Thunder, the LA Lakers, and the Portland Trail Blazers, will all be rescheduled. After the NBA's announcement, the dominoes started to fall. In Major League Baseball, 3 games were postponed. Another Wisconsin team led the way. The Milwaukee Brewers called off their home game against the Cincinnati Reds. We need to pause and reflect on the events that are causing such pain and hardship to our local community and country, the Bureau said in a statement. The entire organization is committed to putting the spotlight on racial injustice, inequality, and the necessity for change. The Seattle Mariners, a team reportedly with the most black players in the majors, decided not to play San Diego on Wednesday, saying the team stands with our players as they speak out with their words and actions against social injustice. The LA Dodgers and San Francisco Giants also postponed their games. The WNBA postponed its 3-game schedule Wednesday night. Major League Soccer called off 5 games. So, all the sports up here that nobody's watching because they don't care about the social justice message have all called off their games. And then, to follow suit in solidarity, the sports that nobody ever watches also said that they're not going to play. So that's what we're seeing up out of that. Alright. I'm going to skip this one from Yahoo Sports because it's saying the same thing about the MLB here. Let's keep going then. Another one at that point from NPR, because we do need to pay attention to our friends in the South here. Hurricane Laura comes ashore, threatening unsurvivable storm surge. I'm Jay Edgar, and you're listening to the Freedom Scoop Media Group Network. Up ahead, we've got some great news on some stocks and such. Yeah, no, we're not going to do that. Hurricane Laura made landfall at 1 a.m. Eastern Time Thursday, with extreme winds and an expected catastrophic storm surge in parts of Texas and Louisiana. According to the National Hurricane Center, the center said that Laura is an extremely dangerous Category 4 hurricane, now with maximum sustained winds of 150 miles per hour, just 7 miles per hour short of Category 5 classification. Really? They changed the classification at 157 miles per hour? Not 160? That seems like an odd number to change your classification at. That would make Laura the 4th Category 4 storm to strike Louisiana in modern history. Most forecasts initially predicted Laura's intensity would reach a Category 2 or 3 storm, but the hurricane ramped up quickly since the start of last week, intensifying by 65 miles per hour in one 24-hour period. Laura is the 10th hurricane to make landfall in the continental U.S. with winds of 150 miles an hour or higher since modern record-keeping began in 1851. Most recently, Hurricane Michael in 2018 had an intensity of 160 miles an hour when it made landfall in Florida. While most storms tend to weaken before landfall, 3 storms in recent years have continued to strengthen as they approach the shore: Harvey in Texas in 2017, Michael, and now Laura. The storm is forecast to move inland overnight Wednesday and farther into northwestern Louisiana on Thursday. From there, it will head across Arkansas and over the mid-Mississippi Valley on Friday. The National Hurricane Center said storm surge, the rise in seawater caused by a storm, and tropical storm force winds will arrive well in advance of the storm center, and that all preparations to protect life and property should be rushed to completion in the next few hours. It is also warning of an unsurvivable storm surge with massive waves that will cause significant damage from Sea Rim State Park to Texas Intracoastal City, Louisiana. From Sea Rim State Park in Texas to Intracoastal City, Louisiana. The surge could affect areas up to 40 miles inland and dump floodwaters in that area that may not recede for days. Sporadic tornadoes are also expected on Wednesday night over Louisiana, far southeast Texas, and southwestern Mississippi. As of early Wednesday evening, water levels are rising from Galveston Bay, Texas to Mobile, Alabama. So, it's here. And now we have to go through and talk about the hurricane because this is 2020 and you don't get a breather or a respite. It just goes from one thing right into the next. So we'll be watching this one a little bit closer than I have been over the week because it looks like the Kenosha thing is dying down at this point. We'll still be watching the Kenosha thing because something new is going to pop up and somebody's going to do something stupid. I know Kenosha. I know that somebody's going to do something stupid. So we'll keep watching out for that. But yeah, this is going to have to be what we have to focus our attention on next. And look for fundraisers and other things to help people rebuild in Louisiana once again. All right, let's do some RNC shit. From the Daily Wire, watch South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem opens night 3 of Republican National Convention. From the Daily Wire News. South Dakota Republican Governor Kristi Noem opened up the third night of the Republican National Convention on Wednesday with a powerful speech about what her party believes. I'm here tonight because America is not an exceptional nation, or is an exceptional nation founded on 3 principles: equality, freedom, and opportunity, Noem said. But today, our founding principles are under attack. This year, the choice for Americans is between a man who values those ideals and all that can be built because of them, and a man who isn't just guided by these ideals and, coincidentally, has built nothing. When he was just 28 years old, Honest Abe saw wild and furious passions, worse than savage mobs, he said. Taking the place of reasoned judgment, he was alarmed by the increasing disregard for the rule of law throughout the country, she later added. He was concerned for the people who had seen their property destroyed, their families attacked, and their lives threatened or even taken away. These good people were becoming tired and disgusted with a government that offered them no protection. Sound familiar? It took 244 years to build this great nation, flaws and all, but we stand to lose it in a tiny fraction of time if we continue down this path taken by Democrats and their radical supporters, she said. From Seattle and Portland to Washington and New York, Democrat-run cities across the country are being overrun by violent mobs. The violence is rampant. There's looting, chaos, destruction, and murder. People can afford to flee, have fled. But the people who can't, good, hard-working Americans, are left to fend for themselves. The Republican Party's commitment to individual rights and self-government is necessary today as it was in 1860, when we won our first presidential election, she said. Our party respects individuals based on who they are. We don't divide people based on their beliefs or their roots. We don't shun people who think for themselves. We respect everyone equally under the Constitution and treat them as Martin Luther King Jr. wished, according to the content of their character and not the color of their skin. So that's what Noam had to say on that there. And I mean, there's some, well, there's not necessarily some truth into that, but there's some truth into the idea and some good things that come with the idea of trying to do something like this. Yes, we do want to treat everybody equally based on the content of their character. The color of their skin should, be the lowest thing that you're thinking about when you're talking to somebody. What they bring to the table, what they believe, how they conduct themselves in life. And some of that is cultural, and some of that is going to come with the color of their skin, but to try and break that mold and to just look at people for who they are and what they bring out to the table individually is what we need to do. So that's what we saw off of this here. That's a great speech by Kristi Noem. From the New York Post, Karen Pence plugs military spouses and art therapy at the RNC, from Stephen Nelson. Yeah, I barely even knew the RNC was going on. And like I said, I tweeted at Ronna McDaniel yesterday that she should just cancel all the rest of the speakers for the RNC and just put up pictures of Kenosha and live feeds of Kenosha. All the destruction done under a Democrat mayor, under a Democrat governor who refused the help. Second Lady Karen Pence on Wednesday used her Republican National Convention speech to promote military spouses and art therapy for post-traumatic stress disorder. Pence combined two themes of the evening, touting the Trump administration's performance on military-related issues and celebrating the 100th anniversary of female suffrage. President Trump and Vice President Pence have been supporting our United States Armed Forces, including our military families, on a significant scale, Pence said. 100 years ago, women secure the rights to vote, so let's vote. America, let's honor our heroes. Let's re-elect President Trump and Vice President Pence for 4 more years. Pence, 63, spoke from a stage in Washington shortly before her husband's remarks at Fort McHenry, the island fortress near Baltimore that inspired the national anthem. The Second Lady specifically highlighted our Riveter, a military spouse-run handbag collaboration, and the Sassy Biscuit, a restaurant run by a military spouse. As the Second Lady, I've also been able to bring awareness to a form of therapy for our heroic veterans suffering from PTSD. Art therapy, facilitated by a professional art therapist, is especially effective with post-traumatic stress disorder, she said, telling the story of a veteran who benefited from the working with the art therapist at Walter Reed Medical Center. Trump in June asked Pence to lead a national public health messaging campaign against veteran suicide. She's continued to hold a job on the side, teaching art at Emmanuel Christian School in Springfield, Virginia. So, good on Karen Pence for this. Here as well, I mean, these speeches are, for the most part, innocuous. There isn't a whole lot going on at these conventions because these conventions are, for the most part, the people. And this was on both sides. I know that the Democrats tried to appeal to people who weren't going to be watching, but they were trying to appeal to the union middle voters again, even as the left-wing mobs are destroying cities. But for the most part, these conventions are mostly innocuous because they are speaking to people who already decided that they were going to vote in one direction or the other. The people in the middle are not paying attention to this kind of stuff. All right, let's grab a couple more here. And then we'll do a thing that I like and a thing that I hate, which is probably going to be obvious. Pence warns of an unsafe America under Biden. Takeaways from day 3 of the RNC. This is the third article I'm reading today from NPR, people. Which is good because I'm branching out against other things. Like, you know, when I started out the show, I used to just Daily Wire, Fox News, CNN. I just put them all the big 3 up there and just start clicking on articles from each news site. Now I'm actually looking for stories specifically, and I'm all over the place. I even had something that wasn't green check verified today, but yeah. 3 from NPR, where they talk like this. But I don't talk like this, but they talk like this over there. I don't know how anybody can sit and listen to something that talks like this, especially if they're driving. Especially if they're driving a big truck that could crash into many things if the driver falls asleep. Alright, this is from Deirdre Walsh. President Trump's campaign was forced to deal with a sudden focus on 2 major news stories: mounting national unrest about racial injustice after another shooting of a black man by police in Wisconsin, and Hurricane Laura, which is threatening unsurvivable storm surge on the 3rd night of the Republican National Convention. Vice President Pence spoke to a live audience at Fort McHenry in Baltimore as the keynote speaker and a loyal partner of the president's. While he touched on both developments, his law and order message quickly pivoted to attack Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as the Democratic leaders who threaten the basic freedoms and an economy recovering from a coronavirus pandemic. Republicans turned to several high-profile women to highlight issues like education, healthcare, and efforts to combat the opioid crisis as a way to win back support from female voters, especially suburban women, who helped the GOP win the White House 4 years ago. As polls continue to show the president trailing Joe Biden, the Trump campaign worked to make the November election a choice between 2 starkly different visions for America's future, rather than running on the president's record over the past 4 years. Here are 3 takeaways from the 3rd night of the RNC. 1, Republicans highlighted a law and order message as the nation grapples with racial unrest that the speakers didn't acknowledge. Oh, they acknowledged it. Convention speakers planned a focus of law and order, a lineup of top Republicans describing the party's commitment to law enforcement and support for the thin blue line, but a dizzying series of developments once again focused the nation's attention on issues of systemic racism and injustice. Jacob Blake, a black man in Kenosha, Wisconsin, was shot multiple times in the back by police on Sunday after he admitted that he had a knife and he was going for something else in his car. The episode, caught on video, spurred protests in Kenosha for the past 4 nights. Kyle Rittenhouse, a white male teenager, was arrested for killing 2 people at a protest. In the hours leading up to the convention, NBA teams boycotted playoff games and MLB postponed some games. Pence was the one speaker who did make a reference to the situation in Wisconsin, but he didn't acknowledge the serious blowback that it triggered in communities across the country or offer any commitment to address the underlying issues. Well, the underlying issue in this point would be, don't grab a knife while police have guns drawn on your back. All right, what do we have? Do we have another takeaway off of this? Do I have a number 2 somewhere? Ah, there we go. Republicans featured speakers and messages aimed at regaining slipping support from suburban women. President Trump's support from both college-educated and working-class women helped him win key battleground states in 2016, but it has dropped significantly. Wednesday's program included a mother of 2 who advocated for school choice, Second Lady Karen Pence, talking about her work promoting therapy with veterans, and Lara Trump, the wife of Trump's son Eric, boasting about the record low unemployment numbers for women since World War II. And we could get back to that if Michigan and Illinois would open up their states once again, and Massachusetts for that matter. Kayleigh McEnany, White House press secretary, recounted her personal story of deciding to undergo a preventative double mastectomy in 2018 after being diagnosed with a genetic condition for breast cancer. She said the president called her even though she had only met him a few times, saying she was blown away by his personal interest. The story was part of an attempt to show a softer side of the president. I know him well now, and I can tell you that this president loves the American people, stands by Americans with pre-existing conditions, and supports working moms, she said. And lastly here, Republicans tried to shift the November election from a referendum on Trump to a choice between starkly different visions. Re-election campaigns are traditionally a referendum on the incumbent president, but the Trump administration's handling of the coronavirus in recent months has given Joe Biden a consistent lead in both national polls and polls in key battleground states. Unable to gain traction at the administration's record in recent months, the Trump campaign reverted to a traditional approach of framing the election as a choice, with speaker after speaker on Wednesday maintaining that Democrats were prepping a massive shift to government control over all aspects of life, and trillions of dollars in tax increases, while the Trump-Pence ticket was preserving freedom and a good economy. Joe Biden would be nothing more than a Trojan horse for the radical left, Pence said. Iowa Senator Joni Ernst also used the frame in her remarks, freedom, prosperity, and economic growth under a Trump-Pence administration, or the Biden-Harris path paved by liberal coastal elites and radical environmentalists, America, where farmers are punished, jobs are destroyed, and taxes crush the middle class. Okay. Tell me where that's wrong. Biden's already said he's getting rid of the tax cuts, which are going to the middle class. I don't know if any of you guys know this or not. Well, no. Well, they're getting smaller tax refunds, so they're paying less in throughout the year too. So that's what we're going to see off of this here. That's what NPR has to say about this. I've got one last one here that we're going to go through briefly from the New York Post, discussing a couple more of the ideas that are going along with this. Third night of RNC 2020 puts the onus squarely on Joe Biden. Mike Pence put it on the line with his speech in the third night of the RNC. You will not be safe in Joe Biden's America. As he spoke, Kenosha was reeling from the violence of the past 4 days, while rioters were trashing Minneapolis yet again. The embrace of law and order was one of the key themes of the night, and Pence was at his most dramatic as he said, the violence must stop, whether in Minneapolis, Portland, or Kenosha. Too many heroes have died defending our freedoms to see Americans strike each other down. We will have law and order on the streets of America. He said that the men and women of law enforcement are the best of us and that we will always stand with those who stand on the thin blue line. He defended the right to peaceful protest before saying rioting and looting are not peaceful protests. Tearing down statues is not free speech, and those who will do so will be prosecuted. The contrast really could not be starker with the themes of the day on Twitter, which focused almost entirely on the vigilante shooting in Kenosha, marking the first time in nearly 3 months that street violence in cities has provoked any sustained outrage in the mainstream liberal media. And that's what we're seeing here too, and I don't care for I know that this is something that has to be done. We do have to put a referendum on Biden and Harris because they have awful records already. But we have to do so without pulling the dirty tricks from the other side. We listened to the DNC, we listened to all the speeches and the transcripts of all the speeches where we did nothing but listen to people say, you should vote for me because I'm not Trump, because I oppose Trump. It was an anti-Trump convention. The RNC would do well to make this not an anti-Biden convention, to actually come out with a platform, with a plan of how you plan to reshape America and make it better for the American people, rather than just saying, hey, those assholes over there, we're not them. So that's something to think about going into the fourth night. And I hope that we see something like this because, I mean, that's all it is. That's all it's become at this point. Vote for me, I'm not the other guy. And that's not going to make policy. All right. And that's going to be it for the news. We're going to end the day with a thing that I like and a thing that I hate, and then we're going to get out of here. I'm going to get some breakfast and go to work. So, thing I like today, we're back to the referendum on what I'm watching on Netflix, because I didn't cut mine. I am going to wait until the controversy is out and we actually know what's in that movie before I just say, I'm just going to cut Netflix and the hell with everything else out here. So I'm still watching it out here. And I started watching this past weekend a TV series called Warrior Nun, Netflix exclusive. The series is based on a book that was, I forget who wrote the book. It doesn't say. What it essentially is, it takes place in Italy, near the Vatican, where a young orphan was dead in the mortuary, and a warrior who had a halo that imparted her special powers was killed in battle. Demons were coming to take the halo, and in a flash of necessity, the nun that was in possession of the halo just put it back into the back of this young girl who had just died, who was definitely not a nun or of any sort of religious background. It's very interesting. It's really interesting to see Netflix's take on a young woman coming to a journey in faith based on situations that were put in front of her here. I like where it's going. I mean, it's a little bit over CGI for my taste, but even still, the storyline is good. It's very enjoyable to watch. It's easy to follow. It's not as bad as Altered Carbon is in the first couple episodes. Whereas, like, if you're playing solitaire on your phone or something at the same time as you're watching it, you still know what's going on for the most part. So, it's a really good one to watch. I'm glad I picked it up here, and I recommend that you guys go out and at least have a look at it. It's called Warrior Nun. It's over on Netflix. And now, a thing that I hate. So, I think it's pretty obvious what I hate at this point. I'm sitting here and looking at what is my adult hometown burning in ashes. And people trying to use it to polarize each other. I saw somebody tweet back at me that it was a right-wing militiaman, I mentioned that earlier, that killed those two people even though he was clearly acting in self-defense. I've seen businesses that had nothing to do with any of this burnt to the ground. Seeing the parole office burnt down, which, I mean, should be obvious if you're in any sort of a riot like that. But still, it shakes you down to the core. Seeing those cars burnt up shakes you right down. And I'm sure it's shaking a lot of the rest of you too. I'm sure a few of you have watched the videos at this point. You understand what was going on with that, but it just shakes you. I hate the fact that this is happening, and I have to sit up and wonder whether the people that I care about in that city are safe and protected. Why they have to put signs up that say, I stand with Black Lives Matter, please don't hurt me. Why there have to be so many signs up that say, please, please don't hurt me. I hate that. And I looked at some of this here, and I saw the fact, and, you know, it's like Elaine said over on the Redneck Show, with Portland, it was down and reserved to a small portion of town. And in Kenosha, it's also reserved to a small portion of town, but that is the working class part of town. And they're not going far enough east to go back off to the yuppie side, because there's a yuppie spot over in town just a little bit east of where they're protesting again, because it's lakefront and that's where they go dock their boats and everything else off of this. They're not touching any of the yuppie stuff. They're just tearing down the working class where people work their entire lives to just go off and live in that area and hope that they can move up and go west of 30th Avenue. I hate seeing that in my city. I really do. And I'll do whatever I can to try and get control back into there. To try and get it back to where people can go there and be excited to live there because they don't have to live in Chicago or Milwaukee anymore. They can pay the lower taxes if they come back up out of Illinois. Or get out of the inner cities of Milwaukee and live somewhere that's relatively peaceful. I will give anything to bring that aspect back to my beloved town. But that's the thing that I hate today. So, that's what we have here. We will be back here tomorrow with more contemporary. And tomorrow I will read the names of everybody who chatted up in the chat as well. So I'm going to have to do some work to get to it because I've been distracted with everything and I don't have anything written down right now, but I do have the analytics from over on Restream. Thanks for getting them out there. But if I miss your name at some point off of this, I apologize for this. But we will see you tomorrow. Until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary.